Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Javli, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. We would love it if you could subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Brady Smith. He'll be here to celebrate I'm Getting a Shark. Before we invite Brady into the studio, we want to invite you to our special Juneteenth celebration this coming Saturday, June 19th, 2021. We are celebrating Juneteenth with some really fantastic guests. Here are just some of the guests who are going to be joining us for our celebration. Dr. Michael Waters. You've heard him on the show before. He is an author. He is a pastor. He is a civil rights activist. He is the author of the soon-to-be-released picture book, Liberty's Civil Rights Road Trip. He'll be here to let us know how he is celebrating Juneteenth. Malcolm Mitchell, Super Bowl champion Malcolm Mitchell, children's author and literacy advocate, will also be telling us how he'll be celebrating the day. And TV superstar Karen Parsons from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, also of the Sweet Blackberry Project. She'll be here to tell us how she is celebrating Juneteenth. We hope that you will be with us. It's all happening June 19th, 2021, Juneteenth, this coming Saturday. Join Justina Thompson and I as we celebrate Juneteenth. Join us right now from Los Angeles in California. Really excited to speak to our guest today. He is the author and illustrator of a really cool book called I'm Getting a Shark. Please welcome to the show, Brady Smith. Hey, Brady, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. Great. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm pretty wonderful. Excited to find out all about I'm Getting a Shark.
Well, it's a fun book. Sharks are my favorite animal. I've been obsessed with them since I was a kid. It's something that, as an artist, I drew pretty much when I was big enough to hold a crayon by myself. So I've been drawing them for a long time.
Now, is that because sharks are fairly simple to draw because it's like a kind of oblong thing with a mouth, or was there something else?
You know, I've just always been fascinated with them as animals. I grew up in Texas. I was not necessarily close to the ocean, but sharks just always held my interest. I've just always been fascinated with them. When I was, I believe, 5 years old, Jaws came out, and I remember my older cousin took me to the theater without telling my parents, and I did not make it through the entire movie, and I actually got up at 5 and ran out of the theater and then ran all the way home. True story. But as soon as I got home, I grabbed some 8.5 by 11 paper and I started drawing sharks. And I just love them. I think they're the neatest animal. You know, there's older than dinosaurs. We still have them, and we're lucky to still have them. And they're just the neatest dadgum animals to me.
Yeah. Now, do you remember what part of the movie that
I remember exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's when the head popped out of the bottom of the boat. My gluteus maximus muscles at 5 shot me directly out of that seat, and I was like, the Roadrunner running in air before my feet even hit the aisle.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I remember that well. I'm a bit older than you, but I remember I was sitting in the very front row in the theater, so I kind of sitting like this watching it, and the shark was very large at that perspective.
I bet. The funny thing is today's kids, like I have a 10-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old boy, and they haven't seen Jaws in its entirety, but they've seen parts of it, the non, head popping out of the boat part of it. And my daughter's like, that is so fake. And I'm thinking, well, to you, yes, but to me at the time, not so much.
Yeah.
So it's amazing the different perspective that the children have of, a giant rubber shark today.
Well, the special effects in movies and TV have just come so far, and kids have been exposed. Back then when Jaws came out, going to the movies was a fairly big thing, and that I believe it was pretty much the first, kind of big movie that featured a creature on that level. So
right. Well, it was also one of the very first. It was the first summer blockbuster, right? Because they didn't really release movies in the summer back then because people didn't go to the movies because they were outside doing their summer activities. And it was the very first movie where people went more than once. Usually they would go to a movie one time. This time they would go, to see Jaws. They saw it, 5, 6, 7 times. And then after that, Star Wars, and then, movie cinema has changed forever.
It really has. It's been fascinating watching that. Star Wars was the big blockbuster that hooked me. I think I went to that 14 times.
Whoa, that's fantastic. I myself am a gigantic Star Wars buff, so I'm with you on that, Jed. I love that stuff. It's great.
Now, as an artist, did you always see yourself illustrating and writing children's books?
Good question, and absolutely not. My mom was an elementary school librarian, and my dad, a landscape architect. So I would sit at 2.5 years old on his giant desk and just kind of draw. I've always been drawing. I have always been encouraged to be artistic with my family's great that way, both with myself and my little sister, who also is in a creative field. So I've always drawn. I went to a college in Nacogdoches, Texas called Stephen F. Austin State University, where I got my degree in fine art, but children's books was never really in my bandwidth or on my radar. My mom had always thought it would be great for me to write one because that's, what she just, that was her thing. But I never really had, Jed, a story that I thought was worthwhile or that kind of stuck out. My wife 2.5 years ago, did a cookbook. She had a cooking show called Dinner at Tiffany's, and she did a cookbook called Pull Up a Chair, and she had a literary agent. I myself at the time did not. But I was looking, doing the thing that people do, unfortunately, in today's day and age, where I was looking at my dadgum phone and pushing my son on the swing with my other hand, and she opened up the kitchen window and literally screamed at me across the yard, lovingly, of course, that I'm missing it. And it just, a light bulb hit, and I was like, this could be a really great book where, it's the child's perspective of the parents being on the phone and missing out on the little things that the child is in tune to, and we as adults, unfortunately, really kind of aren't anymore. So that was the children's book. I did a very amateur, naive draft where I took, 8.5 by 11 typing paper and sketched out the idea and stapled it like you do when you're a kid and gave it to my wife. And I was like, what do you think? And she's like, this is actually really a cool idea. And I was like, let's give it to your agent. She's like, well, he only does cookbooks. And I'm like, well, he's the only agent we have that's does books. Why not? Let's throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. And he loved it. And he pitched it, and we went with Penguin. And then from there, Jed, I had the idea of the shark book, and now I'm working on 2 graphic novels. So it's kind of turned, it's kind of, I moved out to Los Angeles to be an actor, and I've been doing that for a living for almost 20 years now, but I've always still drawn and had art shows of my paintings and exhibits of my paintings. I do a daily illustrated journal every day of my life. So I've never not done art. I've always continued to do art, but my career kind of, took a right turn into acting and script writing for almost 2 decades. And I'm doing a show that comes out on Netflix in September, but I'm really grateful for the children's books because with this whole pandemic and with production and everything coming to a screeching halt, really, I've been able to continuously work and be creative and artistic. So that's a very long answer to your short question.
Well,
now I find myself doing children's books, and I'm just pleased as punch, to be honest with you, because it's another form of storytelling,
mm-hmm.
but it's for such an honest, young audience that it's just kind of like the beginning of them hearing stories. It's just, I've just enjoyed it so much. It's really been refreshing to do stuff for kids, to be honest with you, and families.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And I think it's a great reminder. We have a lot of authors and creative people who listen to the show. And I think too many times artists get themselves, and when I mention artists, I'm talking about performing artists and
sure.
visual artists, and everyone.
Exactly. Yes.
You allow yourself to be kind of boxed in.
Pigeonhole.
Yeah. And I think it's so refreshing and really healthy to, explore different ways of storytelling, even if you're not successful in one of your off-road attempts. It's good exercise for your brain.
And I agree, Jed, and I'm glad that you said that because, again, maybe it's just my way of thinking, but, I had dedicated so much and given my all to acting and screenwriting and all this stuff for so many years. And my wife, who's also been in the business since she was a child, she was like, don't put all your eggs in one basket, like you have this other talent for the visual arts and painting and drawing, like pursue that as well. And for some reason, I had convinced myself for several years that I'm like, nope, this is the road I'm going on. I'll always have art, but this is my new passion and this is what I'm going to follow. And when the children's book happened, almost by accident again, because, my wife was yelling at me across the yard. But when that came to fruition, it really opened my eyes where, you know what, I'm not going to label myself as one thing or the other. And when I'm asked this question, because I'm actually asked a lot, well, are you an artist or are you an actor? Are you this or are you that? And my answer is always like, I just want to live an artistic lifestyle. Mm-hmm. I just want to create. Yeah. And that's basically my answer. I just want to be living an artistic life.
Well, let's talk about the story that you created in I'm Getting a Shark.
Yes. Well, it's basically about, funny story. So the lead character, if you will, of the first children's book, You're Missing It, was a little blonde boy. And when the book came out, my daughter, who at the time was 8, she was like, why aren't I in the book? And I'm like, oh yeah, well, not intentional, honey. But so to start off with me explaining I'm Getting a Shark, the lead character is a brunette little girl around the age of 8 years old. And she basically overhears her parents talking about her upcoming birthday. And she's convinced that she hears them say she's getting a pet shark for her birthday. Spoiler alert, that's not the case. But she's convinced, and she loves sharks. She's fascinated with sharks. Her dog, which is the, I don't want to say brains of the bunch, but he's a little bit more realistic. Her pet dog, Ralphie, is giving her kind of his 2 cents of why, sharks would not be a good pet. And he goes through all these reasons, and she's not having any of it. She's like, maybe it's a whale shark. And his comeback is, well, that's the biggest fish in the ocean besides, whale's a mammal, so it is the biggest fish in the ocean. And it wouldn't fit in the pool in the backyard. So we can't have a whale shark. She's like, well, what about a dogfish shark? We can open up a dogfish grooming salon. And he's like, yeah, that's not, no. So everything that she's throwing out. And at the end of the book, her parents give her a little box, and she's like, wow, that's a very small box. And she opens it, and it's an adoption certificate for an actual shark.
Oh, wow.
Which obviously you can do. Mm-hmm. And what gave me this idea is that I did this for my daughter years ago. We adopted a baby elephant. And I just, I wanted all children's books needs to have a lesson, right? So the first book was about putting down your phone and picking up your kid, not being on your electrical device and not missing anything, because, children are only young once, mm-hmm. and it's a fleeting period of time. And the book message of I'm Getting a Shark is animal conservation. That if you have a favorite animal, shark, walrus, turtle, sea lion, skunk, whatever it is, there are organizations that you can contribute to that will help preserve these animals. So that's basically the message.
Well, what a great message. And
thank you.
I love that, because in addition to, helping the animals, it's a great way to give kids a sense of empowerment, to let them know that, climate change and endangered species, these are big problems that seem insurmountable, but you might only be 8 years old, but you can make a difference. You can make the world a better place.
Yeah, and I love that you said the word empowering, because that also, for a kid, is so important, because, Jed, you and I are going to not be nearly as affected by what's going on mm-hmm. as the kids. And for them to be aware of it and to have the opportunity to make a positive change, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, I think it's a real important thing too, and because I think it gives kids hope. I'm almost 100 years old, and I remember I remember it's like, oh, there's going to be a nuclear bomb, and what can we do? And there's nothing, and thankfully that kind of went away quickly. Right. But climate change is going to be with us for a while, and it's going to be an issue that there's no magic wand, no negotiating table people can sit down and solve. It's going to take all of us getting together and, like we said, empowering kids to work throughout the rest of their lives to make the planet a better, healthier place. Yes, and
I'm going to be optimistic here, and I think that it's working as mm-hmm. far as children's being their awareness of it all, right? I mean, little things like my daughter's like, Mom, you left the light on. Mm. Little things like saving electricity, or just, recycling, which we are all giant advocates of here. I mean, we have our separate bins for recycling and, waste, and we compost. So I think that teaching them young is definitely the way to go about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm really curious. We talked about, telling stories in different ways. You gave us a little tease. You told us you're going to be part of a Netflix series coming out in the fall. Can you let us know a little bit about that so we can keep our eye out for it?
Oh, sure. Yes. I honestly, Jed, I don't know how much I can say about it. It's called On the Verge. It's written, directed by a French actress who is just lovely. Her name's Julie Delpy, and another French actress named Alexia Landau. They created the show, and we shot it, last year. And I think we were one of the first shows back to go to work with the whole pandemic. So it was very interesting being on set and being, face masked until you say the lines and then you put the face mask back on. But I'm really excited about the show. I mean, it's wonderful, and everybody, I don't want to use the same word, but it's so fitting. I mean, they were just lovely and creative, and it was a great experience. It was a wonderful thing to go back to after everything had been stopped and halted for so long.
Yeah. Hey, just, we have a lot of parents out there that are listening, and a lot of them might be like my parents were when I came home and said, yeah, I've done this social work thing for a while now, and it's made me a little bit crazy, and I need to do something else. So I'm going to become a professional magician and clown. And
Sure.
my blue-collar parents said,
Yep.
oh, you really are crazy. We need to get you some help. Can you just talk to the parents out there who don't understand how you can make a living creating and being artistic and just put their minds at ease, if they have a creative, artistic kid?
Well, I wish I could say I could put minds at ease. I can just say that, you never know unless you give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
When I graduated from college, I moved back home. I got a job for a year at the Houston Chronicle. And I had that 9-to-5 job to save money and do what, the system teaches us is what you're supposed to do. Jed, I'm a happy guy. I wasn't happy. I mean, I felt like I was just kind of spinning my wheels. And I think for some people, working for other people and having a 9-to-5 job and having that stability, I think is great. And that's, good for them. It was not for me. I basically had some art shows, saved some money. When I was in college as an art major, I think my parents were already a little bit kind of, aware of the fact that I was going to go into some type of artistic field just because I'd also been drawing my whole life. So it wasn't a shock to them. But when I threw the acting curveball, that was a shock, right? Because, I basically, after college, I was home starting my own creative illustration and design company for about 6 years. And then I started doing a couple plays and I was like, wow, I really enjoy this. And I got an agent in Texas, which, there's not that much production. I mean, there's definitely more now, but back in the day, this is several years ago, there was not. And I just kind of had a heart to heart with my parents. And I was like, I think I'm going to throw a Hail Mary and drive out to LA. And my parents were like, well, what about the business that you've been working so hard on for 6 years? And I was like, it'll be here when I get back, and I give full credit to my parents for not trying to talk me out of it, which must have been very challenging for them at the time. They were probably scared to death. Mm-hmm. And I drove out to Los Angeles and I didn't know anybody. I mean, I just loaded up my truck. It was definitely, Jed, I mean, going back to the putting parents' minds at ease. I mean, it was not easy. Mm-hmm. I delivered pizza. I worked at a scuba dive shop. I was cleaning people's, wetsuits that they took out over the weekend, which was not pleasant, but I stuck it out. Mm-hmm. And eventually started going out on auditions, continuously drawing the entire time. I think it took me 3 years to get my first official acting job, where oddly enough, I met my wife through the actress that I was playing opposite of on a blind date. She set us up. So it worked out really well.
Yeah.
We've been together almost 16 years and 2 healthy, happy, beautiful little kids later. So.
Wow. Well, that's a real success for Hollywood.
Yeah, right. My wife and I we're not the most Hollywood of, couples. I mean, we have a house, we have 4 dogs, we have 6 chickens, we have 2 parakeets. We kind of stay home and we look at work as work, mm-hmm. and bringing in the financial stuff to be able to have a life. And that's kind of it. I mean, we're both inspired by our work and we love being in creative fields, but family is definitely the most important and the priority for sure.
Absolutely. Hey, Brady, I know people are going to want to know where to go to connect more with you, to find out more about I'm Getting a Shark and all the other creative things that you're up to.
Awesome. I have a website, which is just bradysmith.com. It has a bunch of my paintings. It has my books. It has a bunch of silly shenanigans. And then there's my Instagram page, which is Brady Smith here. Like, hey, Brady Smith here. That was the one available. That's the one I took. So, yeah.
Well, you also mentioned that your wife has a cookbook. Do you want to give her a plug, or she's good enough on her own?
I mean, she's definitely good enough on her own, but I would love to give my wife a plug. My wife's married name is Tiffany Smith, obviously, but her professional name is Tiffany Thiessen, and her Instagram is Tiffany Thiessen, and her cookbook is called Pull Up a Chair by Tiffany Thiessen.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking about sharks and
Yes.
creativity and marriage and cookbooks and a
We
whole
covered
lot
a lot
of
of bases.
We did. We've been speaking with Brady Smith. Hey, Brady, thanks so much for spending this time with us.
Absolutely, Jed. Thank you for having me, man. It's been a pleasure.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Dr. Stephanie Ryan. She'll be here to celebrate. Let's learn about chemistry. That's the next episode of the show. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, you must be excited that the opportunities to visit kids in classrooms, in libraries, in bookstores, they're starting to happen again, and that's really exciting for children's authors. But it's still difficult to help your book stand out from the crowd of books that are published every single month. Do you realize, and this is not an exaggeration, there are thousands of books published every single month. We want to help your book stand out. We want to let parents, grandparents, teachers, librarians know that your book is worthy of their consideration. That's why we created the Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program. If our panel believes that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a certified great read. And with that status comes a whole lot of promotional tools. Check it out today. Go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Scroll on down to Certified Great Reads. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Brady Smith. Be sure to check out I'm Getting a Shark. Also want to thank my team, Our Hunter Doherty, Fatima Khan, Justina Thompson, Helen Fraser. Want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.